Welcome to The Last Track, where we help people showcase the last track of their life story in their final wishes. I am your host, Brian Norris, the co-owner of Bateman Funeral Home in Newport, Oregon. Just like a song can bring you back to a day, a time, and a memory, so too can a well-planned service. Welcome to Final Arrangements. We're going to today, hopefully for day one, we're going to talk about what final dispositions are allowed in Oregon. So we'll talk about all the different things that you can do. Who is your legal next of kin? We're going to talk about an appointment of another to make final decisions and why you would want to do that. And then when you come back, hopefully everybody still comes back, we'll talk about pre-arrangements and some considerations of what you may want to consider. If you're going to do a pre-arrangement, we're going to talk about death certificates. Everybody says, I'm told I need 12. Well, we'll talk about that. And
At least 10.
At least 10. See, there we go. And I hear that all the time. Well, I was told by my neighbor, because they're an expert, I need at least 10. And we'll talk about what you might need that for. And then military benefits. A little bit about me. My business partner is actually another gentleman that I work with, and he's kind of the silent partner. My wife, I have down here at the bottom, she's actually an extremely devoted teacher to her children at the local high school here. That is her passion. She works with disabled and children, and that is her passion. And I really applaud her for that. My passion, on the other hand, is working on the other side in the funeral home business. I haven't always been in the funeral home business. I've been in the business now for about 13 years. I actually took early retirement from UPS. What is UPS and the funeral industry have a check? I don't know. We both have packages, I guess, but when we deliver things. So yes, I spent a little bit of time in the military, and we've been married 39 years, and we have 5 wonderful grandchildren, and we raised 4 daughters. Let's talk about final dispositions. In the state of Oregon, there are a few different things that you can choose from. The first that everybody knows about is burial. Now, burial can look different to each individual. You can be buried in the land, which is what everybody's really familiar with. You can be buried at sea. You don't have to have served in the Navy in order to be buried at sea. You don't have to have served in the Coast Guard, but you can be buried at sea, and it can be whole body. And there's some things on that, and if you want to talk about that, we can talk about that a little bit later, because there are a few different things that we need to go through to be buried at sea. An entombment means that you're going into a crypt and it's above ground, also considered burial. If you want to know what it looks like to be put into a crypt, my daughter also has got me doing Facebook lives and videos and stuff. And she said, people are probably wondering what it's like to be in a crypt. I don't suggest that that's something you go crawl into and do, but you can watch it. And we actually open up a crypt and we show what it looks like inside. And that way you can get an idea if that's something that you would like to consider. And you can see it in a video. We don't have anybody in there, but we do open it up so you can see what the inside of a crypt looks like. Cremation. We're just in Oregon, just starting to get into a second type of cremation. Everybody's familiar with the fire type. And we do, in our businesses here locally, we have 2, what we call retorts, 2 crematories. So we do everything local. We don't ship anything out. We do all of our cremations here local. If you have a plan with somebody else, like with Neptune or a national, there are reasons to have those types of pre-arrangements. We actually, with the large national corporations, because they're based up in Portland, they call us and we do their cremations for them as well. So if you have one of those policies, don't worry, we would still be the ones that would be taking care of you here in our county. The other type of cremation is something that's called aquamation, and it's new, it's different, and essentially it's done with water and alkaline hydrolysis. I do not own any of those facilities. There is a facility that does that in Roseburg. And so if that is something that you wish to do, you can do a pre-arrangement and we would be taking you to Roseburg to be taken care of. There was one up in Portland, but they closed it. So there is one location currently in Oregon that offers that type of cremation. And those are just something to keep in mind, and it's something you can talk about, and it's a good alternative. Natural organic reduction. That is also something that's new, and that was pioneered up in the Washington area, up in Seattle. Oregon last year passed to where that can be an option for you. Natural organic reduction is exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of like being buried, but you're placed into a pod and they accelerate that reduction or decomposition, essentially. And when you're done, you have the option of essentially having what's left over to be placed out, for growth, to be planted, that type of thing. It's not for everybody. It's certainly new, and I'll be interested to see how things go. So far, there's nobody in Oregon that is offering that service. What I've been doing is if anybody, and I've had a few people come in and talk about it, what I tell people to do is they need to talk to the company in Washington that is offering that service, and you would do an arrangement with them, and then we would be the people that would come take you into our care, and then they would come down and pick you up and take you up there for that service. That's not something that we have or that I don't plan to be offering anytime soon right now. There's one other that we ship out. So there's a lot of people that have retired in this area, and a lot of times people want to go home. They want to go back to Colorado. She says no, she wants to stay here. But if a lot of people have retired down here, and so when they pass away, we do that service, and it can be either do a cremation and then get the urn back to where it belongs, or take the body and we would do an embalming or prepare the body to be shipped, and we would ship that. We go up to Portland and we ship. We get a lot of people, there's a lot of people that are from Guatemala, Mexico, that type of thing. We do that all the time where we take people and we ship them home. So that is a service that's offered as well. And if that's something that's important to you, and we had a person that had to be buried in Arlington, and it took 7 months because Arlington is that far out in planning and scheduling. And so we embalmed the person, we had them ready to go. We checked on that person every week to make sure everything's working. Well, not that kind of work. Let me rephrase that. We make sure that they still were presentable, We don't bring people back. That's against our business policy. Yeah. But we did make sure that the person was okay to be presented, because they were going to do an open casket 7 months down the road. Wow. So that is something that we do offer. One other thing that I forgot to mention about burial, and I get people that ask this question, is they might say, I've got a farm. I want to be buried on my property. That is a right in Oregon. You can be buried on your property. There are a few things you need to take into consideration. The first being, is your property paid for? And if it's completely 100% paid for, then you have the right to go there just because you've decided you want to go there. If it's not paid for and you still are making payments, then you need to get the bank or the line of credit or the people that are holding the mortgage to allow you to be placed there. Because there's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. If you are going to be buried on your property, you have to think about, okay, down the road, I may have family members that want to come visit, because now what you've done is you've actually created a family plot. You've created a miniature cemetery. Eventually, someday, when that property is transferred out of the family, there's going to need to be an easement placed on that property. And so when it's being sold, it needs to be disclosed. There's a family plot that is on that property. So those are things that you need to keep in consideration if you're deciding that that's where you want to be placed. Another thing is, if you're going to be buried on your property, how do you want it to look? You know, because there are groundwater things that you need to keep in, especially if you have a well. You need to make sure, you know, a lot of the stuff we've lost because we just don't do it anymore. I mean, it was done forever up until about 100 years ago. And so those are the things that you need to keep in consideration if you're going to be buried on your own plot. And how are you going to get there? We had one family that were getting buried on their property. You know what it's like when it's pouring down rain here and you have a mud road that you're trying to get up to, and it's a beautiful prominence. You can overlook everything, but you have to get up to it. So you almost needed a goat, you know, in order to be able to pull the person up, you know, and so keep those things in mind. Any questions so far? Okay, yes.
Being buried on your own land, or who requires embalming to do
Okay.
that?
Excellent question. Embalming, 95% of the time is not required. And it's not required at all by the state or by the feds. Okay, embalming is not required. A lot of people think it is because for decades, everybody was embalmed. And a lot of times you were having a viewing and that type of thing. And quite frankly, the funeral homes didn't have refrigeration units in them, or if they did, it was extremely limited. And so in the old days, I mean, literally every single person that was picked up, anybody in here know Gene Bateman?
Oh.
Yeah, okay. Everybody, I mean, the Batemans did not have a cooler really much bigger than a 6-person cooler for years because everybody that came in was embalmed, and then, you know, that's how they preserved them. So embalming is not required in Oregon. There is a requirement if you're going to have an open viewing. There might be some contagious diseases that a person may have had prior to passing. And so you would need to make that person able to be viewed safely. That's why you have the embalming. But no, really, you can be buried on your own property and you can do it however you want. That's kind of why I was saying you need to pick it how you want it to look. Because if you have groundwater and you do it wrapping it in a shroud and being placed in the ground, there can be some challenges there. I saw another hand somewhere in here. So very good question, because there is a difference between green burial and natural organic reduction. And what that's being described as green burial. And we actually have some locations in our county that you can be buried, which is considered green burial. So what is the difference? So green burial, if you want to be placed naturally unembalmed without an outer burial container. So green burial, most of the time does not have an outer burial container. They can be in a wicker basket. It can be in a shroud. It can be in a casket that doesn't have any metal parts to it. That's all considered green burial. And Yahat Cemetery is one that does have green burial plots. Alderwoods, I don't know if they have any more spots available down in the Waldport area, but they had some green burial plots. In Lincoln City, our cemetery offers a couple, a little section for green burial. So those are things that you can consider. Yes, sir.
Is natural organic reduction the same as composting?
Yes, it's composting.
And what do they do instead of the compost afterwards?
So you would have the option of what you want to have done with it. And so some of the places, they already have contracts with some place to take that compost because they're growing. Sometimes you can actually have it taken to your property. And that's really what the idea behind natural organic reduction or composting is to be able to contribute, to the land. Something else before we move on to with cremations, if you're thinking about that too, there are places where you can scatter. You can be scattered at sea. You can be scattered on your own private property and you really don't have to tell. Once you're cremated, that is no longer considered a person. Okay, it's now considered legally as property. And you can dispose with your property however you want. I always tell people, make sure you know where you're going, because if you go out to like Rocky Creek Point and you're getting ready to scatter, it's beautiful, and everybody has this beautiful image of going and scattering, and it floats gently down into the ocean. But when you have those up breezes going, or if the wind is coming from the north, you just know. You go like this first with just a little bit to see where it's going to go, and also know who's downwind. Because if you're on a bridge, it also swirls up around behind you, so be careful. There's a biodegradable bag, and we offer this to people because, again, if you're trying to scatter but you don't want it to go everywhere, it's kind of nice to have a biodegradable bag. You put the cremated remains in there, the bag dissolves, and the ashes will will spread.
We
And that
did
is the way to do it.
multiple bags so that the family could get together and disperse it together.
Right. Yes, people ask, well, can I divide up the cremated remains? Yes, you can do it in as many bags as you want. I saw another hand.
Can you talk about burial at sea? What do we do?
Yes, so burial at sea, there are some requirements. You need to be at least 3 miles offshore, and then it has to be so deep. Well, Oregon has a very shallow shelf, and so you need to go quite a ways out.
You take your own boat out? Or?
You can. There's different charters that you can use. There's the charter. There's here in Newport, you can charter a boat, and they'll take you out. You can charter the boat. You can go out as a family, and you can do. And they know exactly what to do.
So you can't use your own boat.
You can use your own boat,
Oh.
and if you have a friend that owns a boat too, you can go out. I mean, people do that all the time.
Okay.
Yes. With cremated remains. With a body, you can do that as well. But again, we have to make sure we have all of there's certain requirements for the casket. It needs to have metal bands around it. There needs to be holes drilled in it in order for it to sink. Because what you don't want to do is have the body come back in with the next tide.
Okay.
So anyway, I always tell people, and I don't try to influence it, but cremation, so the most expensive urn that you can imagine buying is less expensive than the cheapest casket that you're going to get. And that's the difference. All right, we're going to move on. But wait, I have a power of attorney. Who is your legal next of kin? Well, the state of Oregon can tell you who your legal next of kin is. And that's in ORS 97.130. There are legal steps that you need to follow as far as a legal next of kin. And the way it works in Oregon is the very first person in line is your spouse. I get people that have been together for 30 some years, and I can't use that person because they're not legally married. And so if you want that person that you've been living together with for 30 years to take care of it, the way it works in Oregon is your spouse is first. If you're not married or if your spouse is gone, then it goes to your children. And I can't tell you how many first siblings. See, I'm a number 2 boy. Okay, I was a number 2 child. My number 1 child in my family knows everything, right? So the oldest person in the family comes forward and they'll look at me and they'll go, well, you know, we've got 3 children that my mom and dad had, but I'm the oldest. That's not the legal next of kin. Okay, it's one of those. So it's not the eldest, it's the children in the family, and they're all the same level. So ideally, you pick one ahead of time so that the other 2 aren't fighting that, well, no, mom wanted this, dad. I had like 6 children sitting in my office, and I said, I'm leaving. I'm going to go out and get a drink, and I'll go to the restroom. And when I come back, I want you to appoint one person. I'm only going to talk to that one person. So then when I got into talking to that person, and the other ones start to chime in, I'm like, I'm only talking to that one person. So tell that person what you want. Yes.
And the children have to be over the age of 18.
Thank you. The children have to be over 18, okay? And that's important because we also had a gentleman that passed away and his only child was 15. And so legally she couldn't do anything. We had to go to aunts and uncles and that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, that child, when she turned 18, she showed up at my doorstep and said, now I want my dad.
Oh,
She was responsible. It was great. She was one of the most adult-like children I've ever seen.
So where does it go after children? Is it like?
Thank you. So
sister-
after children, then it goes to a parent.
Oh,
So if there's parents that are still alive, then you would go to the parents. Then after the parents, then it goes to siblings. And then after siblings, it goes along and it will bounce along. It'll go to a guardian, it'll go to the person in the next degree. So like cousins, that type of thing. You get down to personal representative, okay? That's this one down here. I get it so many times. But wait, I'm the executor of the will. And they're not even family. And what that executor of the will is given is the rights to be able to pay those bills, the final expenses. But I also get siblings that are saying, don't listen to Susie because I'm the will, I'm in charge of the will. Well, I always tell them, okay, so if you want to be number G and your sister is actually D, you can be G if you want, but I'm going to be talking to D because they're next in the pecking order. That's something that's important to know. Also, a power of attorney, briefly, we were talking about, I cannot tell you, power of attorney is really important and everybody needs to understand what power of attorney means. And the one thing about power of attorney is it passes on death. So when I get somebody calling me saying, well, I'm the power of attorney for, okay, are they alive or are they dead? Because if they're still alive, we can take care of some stuff. If they've already passed, but I got a durable power of attorney, well, it doesn't endure past death. So a lot of people don't know that. Yes.
So unmarried, parents dead, no kids, 4 siblings, so it's going to be, I have to appoint somebody ahead of time, one of my siblings, right?
I didn't pay her for that. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about right now. So to her point, there's a few reasons that you would want to appoint someone. It's also found under ORS 97.130 because the state tells us everything that we're supposed to do. There's a few reasons that you would do it. And well, maybe you have a next of kin, which is a spouse, but you don't want your spouse to have to deal with that. So you can appoint anyone you want. I've had it to where somebody had a beautiful $10,000 funeral prepaid for. They wanted to be taken to the Catholic Church. They wanted a viewing. They wanted to have all of this stuff. They picked out their perfect casket that they want. And that next of kin came in and said, cremate them and give me the difference in the money. So and that can be the case because the legal next of kin has been given that authority to make those final arrangements. And so I cut him a check for $9,000. We did a cremation, put him in a cardboard box and said, here you go. And I don't know what happened to that person after that, but by law, that's what we had to do. So if you have somebody that you're not quite sure, if you have, let's say you have 3 children and your oldest one is that type that says, I'm always in charge, but you really want number 2 because number 2s are really nice. You really want number 2 to do it because maybe number 2 is going to actually follow all of your directions. I have a father-in-law that appointed me. I'm in the industry, so that was one of the reasons, but he didn't want his 4 daughters to argue. And he knew that I'm going to do exactly what my father-in-law says. And so I'm the guy on the trust that will be taking care of the trust because I will do exactly what he tells me to do because I've done it for 39 years already. So I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So appointing the next of kin or appointing anyone takes you out of that loop of following that pecking order. And it says, we're not going to follow this pecking order. We're going directly to this person. And it can be anybody that you want. It can be a best friend. It can be family member.
But that's an Oregon state.
This is Oregon.
So I die in Colorado.
Correct. So first off, I'm sorry. But if you take this with you, you know, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a lawyer over there, but that most likely could be recognized, but when you get there, once you land and get things set up, then you might check to make sure that it's still recognized in Colorado. So this particular form, at the very bottom, it says it needs to be witnessed by 2 people. So it doesn't have to be notarized. I think if you get it notarized, that's one step even better, but if you have 2 witnesses, then that will work. And we took that directly off of ORS 197.130.
Do the witnesses have to be in presence of each other?
They need to be in presence of you signing.
Oh,
So I would get the 2 together, have them
Okay.
sign and then have it. I saw another hand over this. Yes.
How much pollution is from cremation?
How much what?
Pollution.
Pollution? Good question. Part of it depends on the equipment that's being used. So older equipment is going to have more pollution than new. I say that just because we just put in 2 brand new. So we went from needing 4 hours to literally an hour and a half. But it does use natural gas. It's very minimal. When DEQ comes through and does all of our certifications, we're so far down on the radar because we really don't. Now, you have seen maybe the crematory sometimes if it's pumping out. If it's not managed properly, it can do some pollution.
I'm thinking, gold crowns and
Oh.
metal pieces.
Thank you for the question. I did not pay her. Okay. So very good question. So once people always ask me, they'll say, well, what about my hip? What about my leg? What about, this kind of thing? So in my crematories, I can't answer for everybody else. In mine, what we do is after everything's been cremated and we're reducing it so that it can be turned back. If we find any metal parts, if we find teeth, that type of stuff, those actually go and they get recycled. And the money that comes back, we give as scholarships to our kids in the community. So if you go to the website, we've actually done we started this in 2014. And I've got pictures from 2015 on. So we have all of the pictures and we actually have them in our lobby. And we've done over $31,000 scholarships since 2014. And we're giving out 3 to 4 scholarships every year to kids in the community. So that's what we do. So thank you for that question.
What do other places do?
So by law, it actually can go to me, to the owners, because that's just like a byproduct of our services.
But it doesn't go to the family. It doesn't go.
No, well, and the family can ask for it and we will do everything in our power because, quick story, we had a gentleman that had a screw and he always said he had a screw loose. And so at the service, we gave the screw back in front of everybody and they said, here, grandkids, he actually had a screw loose. But we will give these back to the family if they requested as much as we can find.